What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of Process Sports Radio. Once again, I'm your host, Justin Pooney. I'm super excited to have you guys here today. Hope everybody's doing well. It's kind of shitty weather here in Vancouver for all you guys living out here. It's raining, it's cold, in the middle of June. Like, what the fuck's going on, right? But, you know, hopefully things get better. Sun turns better, allowed to go out more, and all of that gets better. But as always, please like and subscribe to this video. Please follow me on Instagram at Process Sports, at Twitter _Process Sports, on Facebook. Remember, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever. There's got a couple good interviews lined up as well. So definitely more and more good content coming. So stay tuned, and we got more and more good stuff coming towards you guys. But today I want to touch on a few different topics. One, it was redemption stories in sports. So I'm just going to go over some of the biggest redemption sports stories in my mind, or comebacks, because who doesn't love a great comeback, right? So we're going to go through that. I'm going to talk quickly about why this year I feel that these new NHL playoffs, these new NBA playoffs, might be the most unpredictable of all time. And then also, I just want to touch, going back to the personal things, I just want to touch a little bit on what social media does to people, especially within this generation that I'm in, or that majority of the listeners are in. So I'm just going to touch on all that stuff. But first thing is, so Conor McGregor retired on the weekend, right, from the UFC, allegedly. He's not going to retire. He's not retiring. Basically, what's happening in the UFC is this. The top fighters in the UFC are seeing that these guys in boxing are making tens of millions of dollars a fight, and they feel they're not paid for what they deserve. Now, for the UFC, being how tough it is, you don't have individual promotion teams that they have in boxing. It's all one big promotion, right? So the UFC does not have the financial resources at this point in time to shell out that type of money, right? Now you guys have like McGregor, John Jones, Masvidal, these big stars right now that are complaining about wages, which they should. I mean, the UFC is a cash cow. It is the biggest fighting agency or biggest fighting promotion in the world, right? But the fact is this, they are struggling right now because they don't have, people coming in buying tickets for whether that's, of course, shows, cards, weigh-ins, press conferences, whatever, right? So definitely the UFC is taking a hit out of this, and their stars are getting fed up because, like McGregor said, he's the reason why the UFC sold for that much money. I think it was $5 billion a couple years ago, right? So, I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting time. So, McGregor's not actually going to retire. He wants to fight Khabib. He wants that big fight, but he wants to get paid. What do you know about McGregor? If he doesn't feel like he's getting the money he deserves, he's going to take a step back, which is totally fine because, Dana's going to buck up and pay him because he's the biggest draw in the UFC still to this day. So, don't worry, fight fans. It's all a media ploy by McGregor to get more money out of the UFC, and if I had any inclination, he is going to get paid, and he's going to get paid fat by the UFC because they need him, right? So that was kind of like the biggest sports story over the weekend, I would say, is McGregor's retirement. Continuing on the protests and stuff like that going on in the States. There looks like there's change going to be coming. Hopefully, finally, only time will tell. But I'm in full support of the African American community. And I hope that this finally shines light on the injustice that's been going on in the States. And just another thing, I feel like in this time we're in, I feel like racism should not even exist because there's so many other problems going on in this world, and we should be building each other up, not tearing each other down, based on color or whatever, right? We are one society. We need to come together and end this pandemic, this sickness, disease, not only of COVID-19, but of racism. And racism has been a pandemic for hundreds and hundreds of years. So hopefully that this all comes to an end and finally we get some equality out there. And I'm hoping that finally happens. But going back to sports, so redemption stories. So all you sports fans out there, who doesn't love a comeback? Like, whatever comeback. If the Patriots come back in the Super Bowl, or you personally playing a game with your buddy and you come back and win, it makes it that much more special rather than domination, I find, right? You again, overcoming that adversity, overcoming that obstacle to finally reach the top. So today I'm going to talk about a couple prominent redemption stories I feel in the world of sports that I feel are quite big. Number one, and probably the biggest sports story redemption, in at least the last 20 years has to be Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was probably the biggest athlete in the world, the athlete that made the most amount of money, right? He was the guy that made golf mainstream. He was, had a squeaky clean image like Michael Jordan-esque, maybe even better than Michael Jordan, right? But what happens is, fresh off of winning the U.S. Open on one leg, for you, those you guys that don't know, watch golf or follow golf, Tiger Woods had a broken bone in his leg, had a torn ACL or MCL or whatever it was, and played the U.S. Open for 4 straight days on that and won. He played, and for those of you guys that don't know, you got to walk a whole golf course. And when you're walking on that injured of a leg, that's pretty painful, as well as actually hitting a golf shot, right? That's very, very painful. He willed his way to victory, and it was unbelievable feat is what he did. The amount of pain he endured and how he just came through and won, right? That clutch putt he hit on the Sunday to force a playoff, and he eventually won a playoff. Unbelievable theater. Tiger Woods is the greatest golfer of all time. For those of you guys that don't know anything about golf, I mean, people say like Jack Nicklaus and all those older guys, right? Tiger Woods made golf popular. He turned golfers into athletes before they're all fat, just regular dad bod guys. He was an athlete. He worked out. He trained. He treated it like an actual sport. And you know what? He revolutionized the game of golf like that. Nobody in the world will ever have a greater impact in the sport like Tiger Woods had in the game of golf, and how he transformed just the way that golfers became athletes, right? How much money he brought into the PGA, how players' salaries increased, the trophy purses. Tiger Woods is a pioneer like that in golf. But going back to that, so he wins the U.S. Open, and then all of a sudden, you hear he gets in a car accident, he's in the hospital, and all these rumors start coming out, and it finally comes out that Tiger Woods, his squeaky clean image, took a massive hit due to adultery. Extramarital affairs he had, ruining his family, shaming his family, ruining his legacy. Brought the public shame onto him, and well deserved. If you're doing that type of stuff, if you do the deed, you got to do the crime that comes towards you. And shit hit the fan, and it hit him hard. I mean, he had to make a public apology that wasn't the best. He had to go to rehab. And then he came out of it. He lost a lot of fans, lost a lot of sponsors. He was probably one of the most sponsored athletes in the world. And he lost almost all of that, right? And he came back, had a little bit of a rise. I think he was back at number 1, but he never won a major. He was never fully back, right? And then, injuries started piling up in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, right? Where, the point was he couldn't even walk. If you listen to interviews, he said he could not walk. He could not stand. He had to lie down on the floor. He could not even play with his kids, right? And then, getting multiple back surgeries and other injuries and knee injuries or whatever he had, right? He was beaten up, and people thought we would never see Tiger Woods play again. People were saying for him to just retire because he did not look the same. He was hurt always. He could not finish tournaments, right? His game was a mess. And I think the low point was after he got a DUI and for being basically doped up on painkillers, right? And he got arrested, and that was a low point. But then after he got his last spinal fusion surgery, he took his time and got healthy. He started coming back, but he wasn't the same Tiger Woods that overpowered or like dominated guys like that. He used his mind and his smarts to win. And then he, had a couple of good finishes in the majors, played well in the tournaments. Actually, he won, and then he won he won a tournament. He won the Tour Championship, the last tournament of the year in the PGA schedule, and people thought that was unbelievable, and he would never win a tournament again. If you look at just the emotion on his face, knowing that he finally won a tournament, he was back. But then to even put it on a higher level, he wins a major again. He wins the Masters, right? And he solidifies himself as he's back, right? Tiger Woods is back on the map. But what happened this year was, the whole COVID thing kind of wiped the golf season away. But it was unbelievable for what Tiger Woods had to endure, going from at the top of the mountain, the pinnacle of the top of the top, to crashing all the way down to basically hell, which was self-inflicted or injury inflicted as well. But to see him work his way back up to reach the top of that mountain again was definitely just an unbelievable sports story. And to the point now where, he's back he always was the biggest golfer in the world, but now he's back as being and recognized as being probably the greatest golfer of all time, which he should be recognized as, right? So Tiger Woods, definitely his redemption story, his redemption tour, like that was definitely something that will never be forgotten. And in my opinion, I think it's the greatest sports comeback story of all time, right? Another one would be in boxing, Tyson Fury. He just beat up Deontay Wilder not too long ago and became, the heavyweight champ of the world. He is going to fight Anthony Joshua now. It looks like after his next fight with Wilder, him and Joshua are going to fight, and I cannot wait for that. So it's going to be a 2-fight deal. Joshua and Fury, the two biggest fighters in the world. I better be in England, the fight. The fight better be in England, just because they're the two biggest Brits out there, and seeing them fight is going to be unbelievable. I think Anthony Joshua is going to win. I think Joshua's a better technical boxer. I think Joshua's more skilled, and I finally think he's going to fight Fury, and you're going to see that rage come out of Joshua, and I definitely think Joshua is going to win if everything is finalized. But going back to Fury, he has his own redemption story for you guys. For those of you that don't know, I mean, the man was like 400 pounds overweight. He had a cocaine problem. He had made insensitive remarks in the public before, and he was, generally, he kind of threw away his boxing career. But then, he kind of went to rehab, came back out, and eventually started working again, and fixing himself not only as a person, not only as an athlete, but as a person as well. You see now he's doing a lot of good in the community and back in England now, and he's definitely making a difference in England. But he's also changed the way he was boxing. He's leaned out a lot more. He's such a big guy, but he has such great boxing skill. His skill set is very good. That's why I think he dominated Deontay Wilder, because he was a way more technically sound boxer than Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder was a strong puncher, and he had a puncher's chance, but Tyson Fury's a boxer, right? He's got that skill, that footwork, all of that, and losing the weight, building himself back up, getting those fights, having those unbelievable, I'll never forget the first fight against Deontay Wilder, where Deontay Wilder knocked him down, and he rose back up, and it kind of shocked everybody. And I think that's what gave him the mental edge, knowing that if I could take his hardest shot and get up, I can beat this guy. And we saw in the last fight, he just dominated Deontay Wilder. And I think it was stupid of Deontay Wilder to take this third fight, because he's just going to get beat again, right? So definitely Tyson Fury had a great, redemption story as well. Another redemption story I would talk about would be Michael Vick. So again, Michael Vick, revolutionary quarterback with the Atlanta Falcons, the Michael Vick experience, being not only the fastest guy on the field, but the best athlete on the field, and that was never seen at the quarterback position before. Getting $100 million contract, Pro Bowls, 1,000-yard rushing season for the quarterback position, right? Unheard of, right? But again, self-inflicted, being a part of something that was just despicable and disgusting in a dogfighting ring in Georgia, and he had to self-admittedly he did the crime, he did the time, he had to spend time in a federal penitentiary. He went to jail, he lost everything, he had to file for bankruptcy, he lost everything, he went to jail and lost absolutely everything, right? And to this day, I feel that people still hate on him for what he did, but you know what? Looking at his actions, Michael Vick's actions, you can see how he owned up to what he did, and he understood what he did was wrong and despicable, and he is trying to make a change, right? That is something that I feel all sports fans, and it's a theme with all these redemption stories that I just mentioned, is I feel like us as sports fans, us as people, generally like to give people a second chance. For majority of them now, some mistakes that people make are unforgivable and unexcusable, right? But some mistakes that people make, definitely, if you can tell that they've actually changed as a person, and you can see how they've, like I said before, looked at the problem that they were in and adapted who they were and changed who they were for the better. That is something that people will recognize, and they will appreciate, and they will stick behind you 1,000%. So going back to Vick, he got out of prison and nobody wanted to give him a chance, except the Philadelphia Eagles gave him a chance. And what happened, with injuries and stuff, the quarterbacks like McNabb and Kevin Kolb at the time, he eventually built his way back up to this Philadelphia Eagles starting quarterback. And what happened? He worked and worked. He studied more. That was the thing. He self-admitted, said, before, I never really studied it so much. I never took it seriously enough. He took it seriously in Philadelphia, right? He became a true quarterback. And you saw in the numbers. You look at those Philadelphia teams with him at quarterback, with Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy. I mean, those teams were very, very stacked. They had very, very, very impressive teams, right? And it's a shame that Chip Kelly came in and kind of ruined it and tried to put his own offensive spin onto it, and he failed in the NFL miserably. But I definitely think that if those Philadelphia Eagles teams had stuck together and toughed it out, they definitely would have been a threat in the NFC. But Vic definitely exemplified what it took to, again, same thing as Tiger Woods, and he was at the top of the mountain, the most iconic quarterback ever, a game changer in the quarterback game or in football, right? You cannot tell the story of the NFL without mentioning Michael Vick, because he revolutionized the quarterback position, creating this whole new wave of athletic quarterbacks like a Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes to an extent, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, all these guys, right? He opened the door and paved the lane for those guys, right? So he fell lost all of his money, went to jail, right? And he had to start from the ground zero and work his way back up. Now, he didn't reach the mountaintop, right, like Tiger Woods did, but you definitely see now where he's become a respected, people are remembering his great football career, but also now he's a well-respected journalist for Fox, and an analyst like that. So definitely, I think Michael Vick has definitely had a great redemption story. A couple team redemption stories I don't think one that we always know is the 2016 Cavs coming back from the 3-1 deficit and beating the Warriors. That was probably the greatest sports comeback ever, in my opinion. Being down 3-1 to the greatest team allegedly of all time, 73 wins, and coming back and winning the title. And not only that, having LeBron win Finals MVP, winning a title finally for his home city of Cleveland, the first one in over 50 years. That is something that it's one of those moments that is like one of the most iconic moments in sports history that nobody will ever forget. And the fact that there's a 3-1 comeback was even bigger because it had never been done before in the NBA Finals. So that's something that would never ever be forgotten, and I feel that people never ever forget. The block, the shot, LeBron just him and Kyrie willing that team to victory. Even Kevin Love having that crazy defensive stop at the end of Game 7, right? That series and that comeback is probably the greatest in NBA history, and probably the greatest comeback, one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, right? Another great comeback in sports history was in 2004, the Boston Red Sox. They finally beat the New York Yankees in the ALCS. The year before, they had lost in Game 7 on a walk-off home run, and then they came back and they were down 0-3 to the Yankees. And what happened? The Red Sox came back and won 4 straight and won the AL pennant, and they went to the World Series, and they broke the curse the curse, and they finally won their first World Series ring. And I believe it was like something crazy, like 80 years or something like that, and it was unbelievable. That same thing with the Cavs too, because it had never been done before, right? Nobody's ever seen a team come back from 3-0 like that before. Now it's been a bit more prevalent, but that was like the first one, the biggest one that people will remember. And like I said, there's been documentaries written about it, books written about it. It's an iconic comeback story that I feel will never be forgotten, because they went on and won the World Series and broke the curse of the Bambino, right? The curse of the Bambino, I believe it is when Babe Ruth left the Red Sox to go to the Yankees. He set a curse on the Red Sox. They would never win a World Series again, or something like that. It's kind of like the curse of the Billy Goat with the Cubs, some stupid curse like that baseball fans think of. But the Cubs finally beat that curse a couple of years later, and the Red Sox, they came back from 3-0 down and beat the Yankees and then won the World Series. So those in like the last 15-20 years, I feel, are like the biggest sports redemption stories or comeback stories in sport that are really, really, really ingratiated in my mind. Now, if you guys might think of other ones, there's probably other ones too. You could think it's like great collapses as well. But the comeback story wise, those are probably the handful of ones that really stick to me, and kind of, you just really will never forget those, or they kind of give you that where were you when that happened moment, right? So for me, those are the biggest ones that stick out to me. But switching back now to real sports that are now taking place, I want to talk about how I'm really intrigued about this year's NHL playoffs and this year's NBA playoffs, where if you look at it, right, it's potential to be a lot of upsets this year if you think about it, right? You got these teams coming back. Yes, there's gonna be training camps and play-in games and all that, but if you don't catch your flow right away and a team's hot right at the start, they could ride that for a big run, right? Are you like, for example, close to home, you're telling me the Canucks, when they're gonna have Markstrom back, their team's gonna be basically healthy. You're telling me they can't get hot and go on a run? They can't beat Minnesota. They can't beat Colorado. I'm telling you right now, the Canucks, if they get hot, they could make a deep run because, like I said, Colorado could get out of the gate slow because they haven't played in a while, right? You're not going to have that real true chance to rev up and get ready for playoff hockey, right? So I definitely think like teams, even like the Rangers are going to be a scary team too because they have a guy like Panarin, they have Lundqvist, they have those guys in place that can, get hot and ride a team to victory. And like I said, the best 3 to 5 is the first play-in, the best 3 to 5 for the play-in round. That's going to be pretty interesting because that's a pretty short series. You only need to win 3 games, right? It could be a quick series, and you can get hot and you can ride that wave, right? We've seen that before so much in sports, right? Same thing in the NBA, right? You're telling me like a team like Portland can't get hot with guys like Dame, CJ, Melo, Trevor Ariza, Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside. They can't get hot and then potentially threat the Lakers in the first round. No, I'm not saying they're gonna win. I think that LeBron will not allow it to happen. But you're telling me that a team like the Blazers, has that firepower, can get hot like that and just ride that wave in that first round series and win. I definitely think that's possible. And more so in the NBA, I think in the West, I don't think it's gonna be as prevalent in the East because I feel like the East, there's that barrier where there's Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, and then kind of everybody else, right? Even throw Miami in there too if you want. But I definitely think there's a team, teams in the West. Like you're telling me some teams can't get hot and just, ride the wave like that. I definitely am very intrigued because it's not like it's not going to be an equal playing field like that kind of because certain guys are going to be cold starters and stuff like that. There's a huge variable in this, and that's going to be so exciting to see because you don't know what's going to happen, right? Guys, chemistry is might be gone. That's why these training camps are really important for these coaches, that they really got to, set the stage correctly, and they got to understand that, hey, if we don't get off the gates hot, we can be out right away. So I'm really, really intrigued in that by sports. Another thing is I want to touch on is, do you guys think that, these players and stuff will actually want to come and play? So I was reading online that certain guys might not want to play because of the health risk and stuff like that, but or even with these protests, right? What's going on is not going to happen. For me, I feel that all these sports leagues are doing the right thing with testing wise, medical wise, with making sure their players are put first and foremost, which they should be. Protest wise too, every league is stepping up and understanding that racial injustice and social injustice like that is wrong. And I do hope that for the sake of all athletes do come back and play because we miss it and we need it, right? So definitely going back, these playoffs this year are going to be very, very interesting, and I'm super excited to see what type of what the upsets are going to be and stuff like that. But I want to switch to something a little bit more personal here. So as you guys know, pretty much everybody from the age, I'd say, of like 13, 14, 15, Well, for purpose of this, we'll say anything from 18 to, say, 27, right? In that age group, social media is big, right? We're all on social media. Hell, this podcast would not be anything without social media, right? But on a personal level, right, for myself, you look at social media, you see people, social media, it's tend to build your self-esteem up. It's kind of a show-off thing. Yes, it's great in aspects where, it brings awareness to certain topics and stuff like that, but another part is, a lot of people just, like to show off on social media. And for me personally, seeing certain things on social media, people around my age group and seeing them have this and that and thinking, well, I'm not as good. I'm a failure. And maybe people out there think the same thing too. You see things on social media of other people in your age group or other things, and you think, what the hell am I doing? Like, my life is nothing like that at all. I must be a complete and utter failure in life. And for me, that is a huge mental block for myself, seeing that, wow, all these other people have all of this. What's wrong with me? Clearly I'm a failure, or, something's wrong with me. When the case is, hey man, nothing's wrong with you, man. Everybody learns something everybody learns and grows at a different pace. Sorry. Everybody has a different process. Everybody else has a different pathway, right? For me, I'm not the biggest thing into like, high fashion, nice things, stuff like that. I mean, trust me, if I could get my hands on a nice pair of Jordans or a nice pair of shoes or a nice pair of clothes, nice belt, whatever, yes, of course, right? But for me, I don't need the flashiest things in life, right? But, seeing things on social media, seeing, different things, you definitely, it hurts your psyche a bit. And for me, the biggest thing was, you know what? Calm down. Don't let other people's successes put you down, because you don't know the full story. You don't understand what's going on in somebody else's life, right? So the only thing you can really focus on is yourself, right? So for me, and still to this day, it's a work in progress, right? But understanding that everything takes time, right? I will be, if I put the work in and whatever I'm doing, and I, to be a good person, good things will come, right? Things will come, money will come, potentially fame, nice cars, nice jewelry, nice house, whatever, right? It's all going to come, but it all comes at a cost. That cost is work. That cost is never giving up on your goal, like I talked about last week. The cost to be successful is sacrifice, right? Sacrifice things like, maybe I shouldn't buy a car at this age, or I shouldn't spend all this money on these clothes at this age. I should save my money, buy a house, or invest my money, grow my money, right? I feel that, and it's hard, because for myself, like, as well, like, and for a lot of people in this generation that we're in, is they want to look and feel the best. And trust me, I want to look good. Everybody else wants to look good. Everybody else wants to feel that they've achieved something by buying something. I mean, it is like that. But the hardest part is understanding that what things come and go, but the process of what you do and the work you put in and the stuff you obtain through that process, through that work, is something that's insurmountable, right? Yes, you can have a Gucci belt or a Gucci wallet or whatever you want at this age, right? But do you really need it? Not really. Now, if you can afford it and it's within your means, yeah, man, go for it, right? If you can afford to buy something and you want to buy something, hell, man, go for it, right? But for myself, understanding that, hey, when you see things on social media, you see things like this, don't put yourself down, man, because you don't know what somebody else's story is, what they're going through, how they worked for, whatever. You can't make yourself feel bad. All you can do, and you can focus on what you can control, right? For example, if you're 27 and you don't know what you want to do, that's totally fine. If you're 18 and you don't know what you want to do, that's totally fine. But once you need to figure out, you need to find something in your life that you want to do that's going to bring you an income, but also make you happy, right? I feel if you do something that you love and you do it well, the money will come, right? Money and wealth and happiness will come when you put the work in on something that you love to do, right? For me, I love doing this podcast. I know if I put the work in and I, do my absolute best at this, I know success will come, right? And I feel that people need to remember that. As long as you have that goal and you have that driven passion for something and you work at it, when you work at something and you work at it hard and you love it, success will come, right? Because you already have that passion for it. You just add in the work to it, and then trust me, success will come. So for me, don't read too much into social media, people. Understand that it's there as a good platform to bring awareness to stuff, connect with people, but it's not something that you should really look at and be like, oh, I'm a failure by seeing other people's success or other people's things, because you don't know what they're going through. Focus on yourself. Do what's best for you. Do what makes you happy, because when you do what makes you happy, you're going to of course be happy, but also you're going to do the best at it. You're going to suck at something that you don't want to do, right? When you do something that you like to do, you're going to be good at it because you like to do it. It's simple math, right? So that's kind of like the personal thing, man. Like, don't get down by seeing things on social media. Understand that everybody has a different process. Everybody has a different pathway. Understand that, hell, you're not a failure at the age of 23 to 20, whatever age, right? Your life doesn't really begin until you're 30, right? These years are where you build the foundation for the rest of your life, right? Where you build that base where you can build upon and grow and have the successful rest of your life, right? This is the time in your life where, in my opinion, where you make mistakes, you learn from them, and you better yourself, right? Hell, I'm going to make mistakes. I still am going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes, but And I haven't learned from all of them always, but when you finally understand the mistakes you made and learn from it and turn that corner, you'll definitely see that base, that strong base form, and you'll grow and grow like that. But yeah, that's kind of it, guys. Like, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Like I said, please like and subscribe to this video. Please follow me on platforms. Podcasts will be out. I got some good interviews lined up coming up soon. So take care, guys. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys soon.